Hello, Facebook, and happy Halloween. I'm having flashbacks to Halloween last year, which I spent in Kent, dressed as Lady Liberty. So I'm reprising my costume, thanks to Melissa Chernisky, whose brilliant idea it was last year for me to be Statue of Liberty, where I also brandished a favorite book, which will appear backward here, but Jane Mayer's Dark Money, excellent book. I also so I want to wish you happy Halloween. In addition to the Kent flashbacks last year, which is a great place to spend Halloween. It is a very soggy day here, and I am having flashback. My husband and I have been trading laughter all day long about all the Halloweens past, where we have dressed our kids in various homemade costumes that took on water on waterlogged Halloweens, and our kids who by the end of the day could barely hold their heads up because they were dragging so low on the ground. So I wish you more waterproof costumes than my husband and I successfully made over the years, and I hope you have a good night. I'm going to shed my Lady Liberty. I also want to congratulate the Nationals on winning the World Series. As some of you know, we are a baseball family, and although we're not necessarily Nationals fans, we have many different loyalties in our house because we come from different places. I in particular grew up in Ohio rooting for the Cleveland Browns and the Cleveland Indians, which among other things gave me an affinity for the underdog. So the Nationals were definitely that this year, and so my husband and I stayed up late last night watching that game, texting our kids, so it was really fun to watch them win. So I hope many of you enjoyed that too. It was certainly a great series if you're baseball fans. I wanted to point out a few things to you this week. One thing I wanted to start with was the fact that this time of year in particular, it seems like, but generally I get a lot of surveys, and they come in impressive looking expensive envelopes, and I'm sure you do too. Some of them come by phone, and some of them come in those fancy envelopes telling you how special you are for being selected to participate in them. And some of them are, partisan surveys that the result is foreordained based on how they ask the question. But there are a lot of them, and I get some really well-intentioned ones from graduate students and people who are trying to study policy, and I really value them. But the bottom line is that I don't fill very many of them out, and it seemed to me there was a point that I wanted to explain here, which is that so I got one recently that was aimed at told me it'll only take 20 minutes of your time. It's aimed at issues, as a legislator, issues, how you feel on certain issues that affect children and families across the state. And really, there isn't an issue that we deal with that doesn't affect children and families across the state, and that's deeply important to me. And so I put it aside, and then I opened it up, and it was, about 6 pages, single-spaced, more than 100 questions. And so I didn't fill it out. And the reason I feel a little bad about that, because I believe in data, and I think data really helps us make decisions. But I think when we're asked to answer and told to do it in a really quick way, like don't invest a lot of time, just give us your quick responses. When we provide that kind of uninformed, flippant answer to complicated questions, I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem for the data that we then rely on, which is not so smart. But also we get, if you answer a question that is really complex and requires research, without doing that research, you tend to take a position, then get dug in on it and try to defend it later on, rather than have an open mind to data that may change your mind on it. And so it makes me a little reluctant. It puts a little asterisk next to those when you read a survey. Try to understand who responded, how they responded, who might not have responded, and before you rely too heavily on the information that it pretends to give you. So I'm communicating that because I feel a little guilty, because I do like to, I want to look at data on things, but I think there's a distortion here, which is important when you're telling people that they shouldn't spend much time on something that is deeply complex. A couple other news items that I wanted to just bring to your attention. One, the governor announced this week the formation of the Governor's Workforce Council, and who is on it. And it is populated by business leaders throughout the state, educational leaders, labor leaders. And I think it's a really important step forward in a conversation that certainly came up a lot during the campaign, and it is an outgrowth of legislation that we passed this year, which is workforce development. There have been I think, maybe missteps in Connecticut in recent history about a lack of communication between the legislature and the business community in terms of what they need, in terms of workforce development, and what people in Connecticut are looking for, and are people getting the right kind of education in order to fill the jobs that exist here. And I've had conversations of this on both levels, both from many small businesses locally who chose to locate themselves in Torrington, for example, because there is a good workforce that it's available to them, but also others that can't find people with the right skill set, and skill sets that the training is available for, but kids aren't getting the right information to know how they can make a stable living and get jobs that are available here at our businesses. So I just think that's a really important development. I think communication has been less than great maybe in the past, and I think this is going to be a big improvement on it. And I also just want to note the fact that the governor made this announcement at Naugatuck Valley Community College, and the importance of community colleges in this conversation cannot be overstated, because they are really that flexible higher education space that our students are going to need and businesses need. I read a statistic recently that by 2025, about 70% of workers will need some form of education and training beyond high school by 2025. And that is going to require a lot of flexible education. That's going to require higher education, talking to the business community and providing the right level of training, and talking to the kids and letting the kids, young people, understand what that path looks like, that guided pathway to getting them a job that they will be, that will be stable financially, interesting to them. So I think that's a really important development that I just wanted to highlight this week. Also, another announcement from, I think this came from Eversource and UI, about energy audits. So if you haven't had one, an energy audit can really help you both reduce your energy bill and be environmentally sensitive. So it can really, it can help you find those small fixes that can really be a win-win all the way around. And Eversource and UI recently announced that they're reducing the price of those energy audits from about $150 to $75 for a period. So I'll provide information on that in the newsletter, because it seems like, they do things like seal air leaks, upgrade lighting, install water-saving devices, and I think they've calculated that it can equate to about $1,000 in services for the average household, and reduce your annual energy bill by $200. So it's really, those are the kind of small bore fixes that can really be hugely environmentally impactful and financially helpful. So I wanted to make sure to highlight that. A few events going on this week. Again, there are so many that I know I'll miss some, but I'm just going to highlight a few. One, I had a really, Representative Michelle Cook and I had a great meeting at LARC in Torrington recently, and that is one of the statewide agencies that focuses on helping intellectually and developmentally disabled people. LARC is in Litchfield County. And we talked about many things, transportation, of course, being a universal challenge in the northwest corner. And it makes a big impact on them. But we also talked about the various places that their clients work in our region. And I wanted to highlight a few because you may not be aware of it. Some of their clients work at BD in Canaan. They do work for ITW in Lakeville. They clean the barracks, the police barracks in Canaan. They are everywhere. And the leaders of this agency spoke really powerfully about how fantastic the business community is in Litchfield County about providing these opportunities, because they need workers. These people do great work for them. It's just a win-win all around, both for all of the workers at these companies and for the leadership. So that was a really good meeting. I look forward to setting up some future meetings, understanding how that works and maybe how we can increase opportunities about that. I also went to a very wonky but great forum that the COG organized that I just want to flag because I think it's really important, about the placement of solar fields and how we regulate that, and that smaller solar fields are really regulated by local planning and zoning commissions, and larger solar fields have to be approved by the Connecticut Siting Council. And I've had a lot of conversation with people involved in this process about concerns in particular that the Siting Council, making sure that the Siting Council in Connecticut has an appropriate and actually statutorily required level of environmental expertise in order to have, make sure that that we find appropriate locations for solar power, because solar power and other renewable energies are really important, but we have to make sure we don't make other environmental mistakes in locating them. And so that was a really great conversation, and just packed house of people from all over the region who work in planning and zoning, interested in making sure that we do this in a really appropriate way, which sort of leads me to another point. One of the other lots of events that I've been going to this week are candidate meet and greets at the various towns in the district, and it is really impressive in our region, the level of commitment and expertise that we get from people who are willing to run for office and serve on a lot of volunteer commissions and boards in our communities. And they really do fabulous, largely not unpartisan or bipartisan work. We were looking at the slate in Salisbury recently who are willing to run for these positions, which take a lot of time, require a lot of expertise, and it's just astonishing how many great people in our communities will run for these positions. So it's been great to go to a lot of candidate meet and greets and meet some of the people who are running for re-election and other new people who are offering themselves to serve their towns. So there are lots of those that I've attended recently. I'll highlight a couple of up-and-coming ones. There is a Torrington candidate meet and greet tomorrow, Friday at 4 o'clock at Pizzeria Marzano. And there is a one in Cornwall on Sunday, November 3rd at 5 p.m. at the Cornwall Library. That particular event follows earlier. They're also at the Cornwall Library, also on Sunday, November 3rd. There's a viewing of the civic life films done by Cornwall Consolidated students. That's at 5 p.m. at the Cornwall. No, sorry. That's earlier in the day on Sunday. I wrote them both down at 5 p.m., but they're not both at 5 p.m. The civic life films precede that, but I'll put the exact time in the newsletter. And of course, Tuesday, November 5th is Election Day. Make plans to vote. It's really important. We got great people running for office. They deserve your support, and we need lots of people who to show up on Tuesday. So please make plans to do that. One little other thing I wanted to make sure you know: this weekend is the end of daylight savings time. So this is the good one. This is the one where you get an extra hour of sleep. So I hope you can get that extra hour of sleep and have a great weekend and try to stay dry today. I'm sitting in my car and I think don't have an umbrella in my car, so I'm about to get wet. Have a great weekend. Have a happy Halloween, and see you next week.